Baby, come on,
Yes.
let's do
Hello,
this.
sorry. I'm just talking to our first guest. She's fun. We're catching up. It's been a long time since we've been here.
It has. We're back. We're back from Dallas. We're back from Conscious Capitalism. You're back from Raleigh. Good times. And it's warm outside.
I know.
Spring
I'm wearing
finally
shorts.
happened.
You should see I'm wearing shorts.
Yes, we'll do a close-up on that later.
No, we won't.
But we've had a great show.
Talking about different facial routines that you can do.
Yes. I'm going to try the one that you recommended.
You should.
Yes.
Don't I look pretty? Totally obviously works. What's been going on with you? Tell us about conscious capitalism.
We have a lot going on. Well, we did a whole segment on Tuesday for Bold Business, but if you don't know about conscious capitalism, it's started by John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, and it's about integrating directly into your business model, not as some little fig leaf CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's your actual business model is socially minded, which is great. And so they had their big confab in Dallas last week, and we did some live interviews from there. And it was a little nuts, but it was fun.
Bold's just growing and growing.
Oh, yeah. Thanks to you and our amazing guests and our audience. So make sure if you like the conversation, put your comments, and even if you don't, disagree, but do it respectfully. As you all know, that's
By all
our
means,
mantra.
we love hate tweets. What's going on today? We got a big motivational speaker with us today. Yeah?
We do. Yeah, he's coming on. He made this viral moment about advice that he got from a third grade dropout.
Rick Rigsby.
Yep.
He'll be with us in a little bit.
Yep.
And we got a lot of weeks to catch up on in a way. So we're going to talk about some stuff that happened this week, and a few things that happened last week while we weren't around.
Yep. And the week before, which was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and then we've got the follow-up to that. And joining us to walk through that is Celeste Katz. She's the senior political reporter for Glamour. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we were talking about facials before, but you don't work at that part of Glamour.
No, they're much too smart to let me do anything having to do with fashion or beauty or even health for that matter.
That's totally my category of work, fashion and glamour. But you work in the political world, and Glamour does a lot of pieces about politics, and I guess sometimes in the places that politics crosses over with the less political world, and that's why you did a lot of talking about the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah, we were talking about it. I was talking about it with one of your producers in the elevator as I was coming up here to the studio, and the question was sort of, what is the future of that dinner? Was this year with Michelle Wolf? Was it too over the top? Did it cut a little too close? If presidents are not going to want to expose themselves to that kind of roasting or criticism, is the dinner? Some people are saying, is the dinner over?
Right. Well, I was on CNN. We can throw to that clip and just show my immediate reaction. So this was immediately after Michelle Wolf spoke.
So you're saying you thought through it and now you have different feelings?
I have more feelings.
Let's see what you said then.
Yes, I mean, this was incredibly raunchy. I think it's really indicative of why a lot of middle Americans, a lot of conservatives, a lot of people of faith feel like Hollywood and the liberal elites have left them behind. I think this is the perfect summation of the cultural divide that is dividing this country between people who voted for President Trump and people who didn't. So,
and look where the president was tonight before this. It was his 90 minutes on stage at the rally in Washington.
So one thing I learned that night from Douglas Brinkley, who's a CNN historian, was that apparently in previous dinners, they actually had singers before they moved to the comedians. And so I was thinking maybe Clay might want to be one of those singers.
I asked if you had a follow-up. I thought you had a thoughtful follow-up, not nonsense.
That is not nonsense.
Well,
make the dinner sing again.
I will say, I've been to the Correspondents' Dinner, and it's been many years, and it did used to be this big A-list sort of event. And I think that there's several reasons why that has changed. I think that there are a lot of Hollywood A-listers who have sort of boycotted this particular administration, don't want to go, don't want to be a part of it. Obviously, the administration in some ways have boycotted it. I don't know that I would agree with you about it being too raunchy, because it's been raunchy in years past. I think some of the digs that she had were a little bit too pointed. But I think the problem is that the White House Correspondents' Dinner in this particular administration is having trouble finding people who are willing to having trouble finding comedians, not just people to show up, but comedians who are willing to do it. And when you reach for a comedian who doesn't necessarily have the big name like Seth Meyers or Jimmy Fallon or Jay Leno, who did it the year I was there, you're going to find someone who's got to make a name for themselves, And so the only two people I think who won during the White House Correspondents' Dinner were Donald Trump, because it made him sympathetic, and
Absolutely.
Sarah Sanders made her sympathetic. And Michelle Wolf. I mean, she's going to have her own Netflix show soon.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, she was already working on it. And in fact, we have a clip of her. You mentioned Seth Meyers. Let's roll that clip. So this is the post-dinner reaction. She was very stoic about it.
It went great, and every single person loved it. Yeah.
Every single person across the board.
Yeah.
Never
yeah.
happened before.
No, everyone loved it. Even actually, Sarah Huckabee Sanders called me, and she was like, I loved it so much, I got every joke.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I was watching, there were a few that seemed like she maybe didn't like or get.
Well, you know, you give the best information you have at the time. It's the philosophy.
You will be very happy. There was a tweet that I saw, and knowing our relationship, I thought you were just going to love this. This was basically a C-SPAN posted that in 3 days you became the most watched Correspondents' Dinner ever. You beat me.
So, yeah, you're right, Clay.
She's a
To your
star.
point.
She's a star. So
Right.
do you think, back to your elevator conversation, do you think that it's over, or do you think they just need to make some changes to how they do it? I mean, finding people who are either less controversial, going back to singers, not me. I mean, what do they need to do to keep
Kanye.
it? Yeah, that's not
Yeah, that would really
controversial
cool
at
it up. Well, actually, maybe the president would actually show up for that.
all. He could.
That maybe that's what'll bring him back. Correspondents Association, if you're watching this. But I guess the question is what the point of the dinner is supposed to be and what people want to accomplish by it, because that'll determine the format and whether it's worthwhile to continue with it. If it's supposed to be a time when politicians and reporters can sort of lay down their swords and literally sit down at a table without like bashing each other with like the cutlery or like spilling wine on each other or
And
whatever.
isn't that what it was always supposed to be? It was sort
Supposed
of,
to
we're
be.
not going to interview you tonight, we're the correspondents, but we're not going to ask you questions, we're going to have fun together. Isn't that what it was supposed to be?
I think it's supposed to be partly it has a social element, partly it's supposed to be a celebration of the First Amendment. That look, even though we may go at it with each other on a daily basis in our work, we can still sit down like human beings and have a talk and appear with each other in a social environment. And it's all part of a day's work.
Right. Well, and I think that's the difference because I had some progressives on the internet when I was, making my statements. They said, "Oh, you're a snowflake. Get over yourself. You're being too sensitive, snowflake." And I said, well, the big difference between the freedom of speech is being shut down, for example, on campuses, that's about whether someone has the right or the ability to speak. That's a very different thing than selecting, curating, hundreds or thousands of journalists as their pinnacle, speaker. I think that's a big difference, in my opinion.
And the president took a pass this year, obviously, but the flip side of that is that it's a chance for the president to stick it to the press a little bit and to pick on different outlets or different reporters. So it really does go both ways, at least traditionally. Now, if that tradition comes to a complete end, or at least for the rest of this administration, then yeah, I think the Correspondents' Dinner is going to have to do some thinking about the format.
And that's sort of what happens when things become so. The Correspondents' Dinner, if I'm not mistaken, when I went years ago, it wasn't televised. I mean, it was on C-SPAN, but it wasn't as big a deal. When things
It's
get famous, when things
televised.
get...
I love
well, no, yeah,
C-SPAN.
fair enough. Okay, forgive me.
But it wasn't carried
this
live on the networks
right.
and so on.
It wasn't this huge...
No.
publicity type thing. It was what it was supposed to be. And there are other dinners right now, the Gridiron Club and a few other ones
Sure.
that have sort of taken that mantle of being, okay, we're going to be about something, we're not going to try to make this into the Grammys. We're going to make this what it was meant to be. So perhaps they need to get back to that whole, like you said, to that their purpose, their initial purpose. I want to ask you about another thing while you're here. And I'm going to get people yelling at me because I don't want to sound like I'm insulting anyone, but I don't think I understand what Melania Trump's new platform is. The First Lady presented her platform this week. She came out and she said that most First Ladies choose a platform, what they're going to work on, and she came out and she said her platform was called Be Best is the name of it,
Right.
sort of alluding to work-life balance and fun life. Help me, please. I don't quite get it.
It's actually a very, very broad program. One of the sort of most all-encompassing ones that we've seen from a first lady in a while. I think if you look back, Laura Bush was known for her literacy programs, which made sense. She
As was her
a
mother-in-law.
librarian. Right. Very, very yes. Of course, the late Barbara Bush, very focused on literacy and reading. Then you go on to Michelle Obama, who's promoting, I think her program was called Let's Move, and it was against childhood obesity, supporting health and fitness among children. Now, Melania Trump has this program, Be Best, which I think has three main pillars. It's about emotional well-being, and it's about the use of social media with respect and compassion.
Right, and you had a piece that we just put up from Glamour talking about cyberbullies.
Right, and then the last part of that is
Explain the
opioid abuse. But yeah, in the piece we questioned a lot of people when she came out with the program. A lot of people really swarmed her right away, and then they said, if you want to start talking about educating cyberbullies, why don't you just go over to the West Wing and start right at home?
Yeah, I want to know what the brainstorming session was in the East Wing, because it seems like healthy living she couldn't do because her husband only eats McDonald's. Cyberbullying she couldn't do because her husband is a cyberbully. So as they were brainstorming,
Or he
it was like a
stands
race.
up to the bullies.
Yeah, that's it.
But okay, so the premise of I mean, look, these are all totally legitimate questions. What we were trying to get out in the story for Glamour, though, is a lot of people are really sort of dragging her about, it's so hypocritical for you to do this. How can you talk about cyberbullies when you live with one, when you are sort of abetting one by being married to one? And one of the people I spoke to, at least one of the people I spoke to as an expert on first ladies is, maybe the right question is this. Why is it that the minute the president does something wrong, we look to the first lady, we look to his wife to say, why can't you control him? Why can't you rein him in? I mean,
because nobody else can.
Well, but maybe nobody can at all. But the question is a wife, is a spouse generally always responsible for the sins of their partner?
Well, that was the argument about Hillary and Bill and how you respond to abuse or harassment or what have you in the case of Bill Clinton. A lot of people didn't like how Hillary responded. So
I mean, I will be a progressive who will be the first to stand up and say, I do think we need to lay the hell off Melania Trump.
I'm with you.
I don't think that the first lady is not a paid position. It's a completely voluntary position, and
she didn't sign up
for it, and I don't think she wanted to do it. So, I mean, I feel like we need to put this particular first lady sort of in the category as we try to put most presidential children off limits. Now, this particular president's children can be on limits if they get involved.
Well,
but I feel like
she's also not getting involved in a major policy. The way that Hillary Clinton got involved substantively with healthcare policy. She's saying this is about getting people together and to the issue, like I said, on cyberbullying. I think that what the Trump supporters would say is that, well, this president is standing up for people who have been bullied for a long time.
Okay, well, that's just
and
nonsense.
we're going to talk about that more later on the show, actually.
I think the
We'll
title,
talk about that more
I
later
look
in the
forward
show.
to that.
Yes.
I think that, stay tuned, I think the title of her campaign should just have been, I'm doing my best. And I just think we need to lay off Melania Trump. And as a first lady, she is not in a position I think she wanted to be in, and she's volunteering for it. She's not getting paid for it. So I think it's too broad. I don't understand what it is, but whatever she wants to do, if she can work towards trying to improve the lives of anybody at any point, then more power to her. So.
Yeah, I mean, she is, whatever else people think of her, she is a mother. She does have a young son that she's raising in the White House in this very public eye. And she's also following the traditions of first ladies before her in having an initiative that focuses on the well-being of children. So in that way, she's not that different. Other ways, obviously, not quite what we've seen before. Right.
Celeste Katz, thank you very much for being with us. Come back and see us again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I mean, don't you? I mean, we agree on that. We don't all agree on much, but I do think that the first lady can be. This particular one is sort of. She gets a bad rap. I just talked to somebody not too many days ago who was bothered by something that she had said or done, and I think there is a disagreement amongst many people about whether or not she should have the responsibility. There's some people who want her to leave him, but I think that there are some people who are so opposed to this particular president that they want anything that can happen to him to happen to him.
And
I don't
also,
like the man, but leave his wife alone.
I agree, and it was the same with Michelle Obama. There were some people on the right who were just vicious, and I mean that's wrong. It's she didn't sign up for that either. So, but let's bring in some people who did sign up for this conversation.
They did, good. Normally I do the segues, but I just thought I'd let you try it, and you did very, very, very well.
We got John Burnett. He's the CEO of One Empire Group, New York GOP strategist, and a New York or NYU adjunct faculty.
He teaches at NYU.
He teaches at NYU.
Yes, and Jeremy Binks is back with us. Good to see you back. He's an editor and a journalist,
and friend of the show,
and a very good friend of the show. Both of you are. Both of you are. No, I'm excited to see you both. It's been a while. Lots of news this week.
Yes.
Right. I want to focus a little bit on that, especially on foreign policy. So let's start with North Korea. Because there have been some announcements in the last few days about where the location of the President's Summit will be. 3 detainees that North Korea had held have been released in the last 48 hours, at least. What do you feel like the status? We'll start with you, Jeremy, and then we'll get to you. Do you feel positive about this administration's progress in Korea? Do you think that they've done a good job? Do you think it's been a group effort from other countries? What?
I think that we, as the American press, first of all, we underestimate the value of what South Korea has been doing. Moon Jae-in has brought a new wave of opening doors and has really taken the point in brokering peace talks with the Kim Jong-un regime. That being said, I think that time will tell whether or not this madman strategy is going to work. But Trump diplomacy 2.0, I think this lesson is, it doesn't matter what you're going to do for Americans. It matters how you're going to make Donald Trump look. And I think that it should be eye-opening, appalling, and staggering that you had the President of the United States openly praising North Korea's dictator for releasing 3 people in words that we have not heard from some of America's allies. He said more positive things about Kim Jong-un than he said about Justin Trudeau, and
Did any of the positive? I mean, that was the critique he got. That some of the things that he said, the positive praise he's given Kim Jong-un, was sort of shocking to some. Did that strike you in any way as the right thing to do, or did it bother you?
Well, it's one of the tools that you use in negotiation. You can't rip the person down as you're trying to make history, right? He did that initially to get North Korea to the table to release the detainees, right? And to also engage into denuclearization, and also to try to build relationships with South Korea. Now, I understand your point with respect to the South Koreans' role that they've played in this. However, they didn't get it done before Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has played a leadership role in all these other individuals, including the president of China, as well as the president of Japan. All these people are coming together to mold and shape a new foreign policy.
Hold on, but Moon Jae-in was just elected in the within the past year. So I mean, you want to talk about what's changed? That has changed.
And
There's
so
been a
Donald
liberal
Trump within the last 18 months.
So
right?
Donald Trump has changed his position on North Korea. You're saying that Donald Trump has changed his position on North Korea.
What is very clear here, right?
Are you saying that, yes or no, John?
Disagree with the tactics.
Hey, we got so much money. We got so many other things to argue about. Let's get to everything.
You could disagree with the tactics, but you cannot discard the results.
Did he change his mind?
I think what's different is that the carrot and stick method. So last year he was using more sticks, and this year he's using more carrots. I think
basic negotiation.
I think what the big elephant in the room is China, and I think China and Trump standing up to China is what has brought this leverage point.
Absolutely.
Because China doesn't want to see a North Korea that has nuclear weapons. They don't. Because you know why? Because immediately after that happens, who else is going to want nuclear weapons? The Japanese, the South Koreans, probably, I mean, who knows? The Philippines? I mean,
absolutely.
It's just
That's why it was
DEFCON 5
more
at that
important.
point.
That's why it was equally as important to address the Iran deal simultaneously.
I want to get to the Iran deal, but I want to go back to...
Can I just ask one question though? If the Philippines were trying to get nuclear weapons, do you think the president would step in and stop them?
He loves Duterte. I can't say his name.
Duterte.
Thank you. He loves him. He's a dictator. He loves him.
But would he stop them?
Well, he'd want to. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in his interest to denuclearize the
Would he
entire
take
Korean
sanctions?
peninsula.
Would he take sanctions against the Philippines?
That's an
think
interesting
so.
question we
I
don't have the
think-
answer to.
Well,
Let me ask this, because I want to talk about this carrot and stick method, and then I do want to get to Iran. There's been a lot of buzz in the Twitterverse and the interwebs and whatnot, especially in some right wing corners, about the president deserving the Nobel Peace Prize for the work in North Korea. I think they chanted Nobel, Nobel, Nobel over and over when he was at his Michigan rally.
And he said no, it's too early.
He said no, it's too early. He said
results.
No, and then
But let me
he said,
ask- let
if
me
you
ask
want
the
to give it to
question.
me, I guess I'd take it.
Yeah, right. Let me ask a question. Do you think that he would deserve something like that?
I think what he's done so far is indisputable, and if talks go well in Singapore, that lead down the track of all key stakeholders are hoping it would, I think the conversation is a valid conversation to
Jeremy?
have.
I mean, I know your answer, but tell me why.
Does anyone really think that a bunch of Swedes are going to get together and give Donald Trump the Nobel
That's not
Peace
the
Prize?
question. The question is, would he deserve it? I mean, my position is going to be disagreed with by several people here, but I mean, the question I would ask anyone who is doing that is it peace to threaten violence in order to get to peace? You know, does the Nobel Peace Prize go to those who threaten violence in order to get to peace? And is that not an
That's
issue?
the general. It's not a jab, but that's the general statement that a progressive would make.
You're welcome.
looking at Donald Trump and not looking at what Jong-un is actually doing, right? That's the real threat here, right? And
I didn't say we gave him the prize.
And I think when we actually objectively look at this, when we normally see a good cop and a bad cop in two different individuals, right? But Donald Trump is his own communicator. He's his own good and bad cop. He will play both roles.
Right.
That's why he will switch back and forth, because he understands how to negotiate.
Okay, real quick. Then we got to move. We got to wrap. But Iran. So it was obviously a very bold and uncertain move what he did by rolling back the U.S. participation in the sanctions. I applaud it. That being said, there are risks associated with it.
And there are conservatives who disagree.
Sure. Yeah, there are. So, so Jeremy, what do you think is going to happen in terms of the response?
I think it's really interesting to look at what our European allies are going to do, the E3. They, more than the United States, are going to be, I think, the big stakeholders here. So one of the biggest side effects is that there is a massive multi-billion-dollar Boeing order that was supposed to be going to Iran. Iran was supposed to be, multi-billion dollars for Boeing jets. Now, there was also an order for Airbus jets. Obviously, the Treasury Department could stop payments to Boeing. The question is, would there be sanctions on Airbus? Would France and the Airbus consortium allow that to happen? This is a lot of money we're talking about with a regime that actually has the money to spend.
So the question is pulling out of Iran necessarily of the Iran deal going to matter if everybody else stays in and tries to come up with something?
In my mind, it's the same thing like the Paris Climate Accords. If we see Europe pushing forward with it, it's going to be a new era of global politics.
Well, let's let John respond to that.
Let's
Does it
look
matter?
at this algebraically, right? So,
oh God, I'm screwed.
On both sides of the equal sign, you have risk, right? Whether you stay in or whether you pull out. He decided to pull out. So either way, it's not one is better than the other. Both have risk, right? Now, to your point, whether you stay in and pull out, you still have to deal with those issues with respect to the government there not willing to have unannounced inspections and so many other fundamental flaws in the agreement. And the issue here from the outset is that people have mistaken activity for accomplishment. Just because there's a deal doesn't mean that anything has been accomplished. So once you separate those two things and really negotiate a better deal, right, with enforcement and oversight and accountability, then we're right back to where we started.
John, you're expecting that we'll actually get something better. You're hoping we get something better done in the future, a better deal.
Are we supposed to have optimism or not?
Well, I mean, no, I'm not. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that it requires a better deal. So,
Right.
And some people would argue it would be nice to have one before we pull
I'm not stealing
out.
a future segment here, but it's important to have hope.
Oh no, we're gonna steal a few.
negotiation.
We're gonna have. You both have set up several future segments because the truth is we don't know what's going to happen with this Iran deal. It's very new news. We're seeing Europe making moves. We're seeing Iran making a few moves. We even seen Israel make a few. So there's a lot of
There's
stuff.
a poem by George Bernard Shaw, right? And part of the gender reference, but I believe it goes something like this. The reasonable man is molded and shaped by his environment. The unreasonable man molds and shapes his environment. Progress only comes through the unreasonable man.
I'm going to have to read. I'm going to go read that. We're going to put it.
Because you have to think differently. It holds true in technology, it holds true in politics, and it holds true no matter what element or facet of society that you apply it to.
Well, we're going to end it here because we got to go on. But I will agree. I think we'll all at this table agree that this current president thinks differently.
Absolutely.
How you want to interpret that is up to you. Thank you so much, John and Jeremy, for being with us. We will definitely have you back as the Iran discussion, as the Iran progress continues, and then North Korea too. Yes, I do like those two.
Of course, that's why we have him back all the time.
I mean, listen, you can't put the back in the horse, right? And so we're now, I guess, in this situation, you could go back into it, but we will see. And I do think Jeremy's got a point. If North Korea, I'm sorry, if Iran is going to start working with Europe to come up with a similar agreement, then will it matter that?
But part of the sanctions are secondary sanctions in the sense that the United States would sanction the Europeans for doing trade with the Iranians. So we actually have a lot of leverage with the Europeans.
And then therein lies the question: are we going to sanction our allies? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that. I'm not sure that you're going to get a lot of support.
When I heard France and Germany trying to
to
lecture us about moral authority and trying to tell us how to have our foreign policy, I'm just. Y'all sit back down.
I don't know that you're going to find a lot of support amongst Congress to sanction some of our strongest allies, and I'm not even sure that the president is going to sanction someone who he's got such a bromance with in Emmanuel Macron. But we'll find out. Let's that was talking about the future. Let's look a little bit back into the past. Most recently, it's time for report cards. Right? We're going to take a look back at what has been going on in the past several months, the last quarter, if you want to say. And we've got one of my favorites, Alicé Anil, is here. She's back with us, and so is Jason Meister. He's a advisory board member for Donald J. Trump for president. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
We want to take a look at some of the things that have gone on in this past several months, maybe even a year, in the Trump administration, and kind of give them a grade. So, Jason, you only have an A, so don't worry about it. You don't have to look through anything. But we want to take a look at 3 areas and just sort of grade the president and kind of explain your grades. We've done this before, and so. Like I said, you only have to hold up the one card, Jason. You don't have to worry about anything.
The difference this time is we have pluses and minuses that we didn't have last time.
You have pluses and minuses.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Carrie likes to get real. Yes, nuance is Carrie's middle name. Hardly. I want to start with immigration policy if we can, because it's one that he ran on probably the most strongly. And talking about the wall, talking about immigration in general, and his belief on how it affects the country. So let's do you want to Carrie, do immigration policy in general?
So can I ask for some clarification
I won't have
what
it,
we're doing?
but give it a shot.
So are we supposed to grade based on the fact that Trump has actually executed on his campaign promises and he is doing what he said?
I think you can grade however you want to.
On the actual legitimacy or effectiveness of his policies?
I think you grade however you want to, and then explain
How about what's best for America? How
well,
about that?
but her point is her point might be if his campaign promise was I'm going to do this,
executing it.
and he's done it, then he would get a better grade, even if somebody disagrees that it was good for the country. So I think we kind of take a second after each one to explain your grade.
Yeah.
So do what you want to.
Okay. Cool.
So let's start with immigration policy. I won't make you go first every single time, Jason, but let's go ahead and start with you on immigration.
So I guess I'm going to give President Trump an A-.
Ooh, look at that.
On
There's nuance.
immigration.
Yes, there is.
Because this was one of the top priorities of his campaign. It galvanized his base, and we still don't have a wall. Now, having said that, it's only been a little over a year, so there's still time, right, in his administration to build that wall. And he's actually cut illegal border crossings by nearly 75%. So he's done an excellent job when it comes to immigration, but the wall is not built yet, so therefore the minus.
Okay. Call on somebody, Carrie.
Alicé.
For the purposes of nuance, I'll do a D+.
Okay. Explain that.
I'm looking at it through several lenses. I'm a proponent of open borders. I believe that this country is founded, at least ostensibly, on the idea of the American opportunity and the American dreams, and that we all come from immigrants. I'm actually an immigrant, and I have a number of friends in New York that are immigrants that are having a harder time, that are highly skilled, that are the kind of people that you want to keep in America. They're now coming across problems with staying in the U.S., even though it's beneficial for the economy and it's beneficial for the country. I don't don't think in the long run this is a policy that will benefit the U.S. and culturally, economically, especially we're in New York City. And the idea that we are having a government shutdown because Congress and the president himself is debating whether people that were brought here as children have a right to stay here is just morally bankrupt for me. And I think it is taking a turn for the worse. And the kind of vitriol that's coming from the White House and from people that follow him, I find incredibly dangerous. So that's my D+.
You want to go next so we alternate?
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm going to give him a B+. Did I do that order right?
Yeah, sure.
Because he made the right call on DACA because that was an completely unconstitutional policy that had been put into place by the previous administration, completely usurping power that was designated to the legislative branch. So spot on. And honestly, it's funny when people say that he's a despot who wants to have power. This was a guy who gave up power and said, no, this is something the legislature should do. So I think that was the right call. I think he also changed the conversation to say we should be focused on merit. We should be focused on what does this immigrant bring to the country versus what are they taking away from the country. And so I think that was important. And I'm reminded of the words of Milton Friedman, who said that you can either have a completely open border society and no welfare state, which is basically what we had with Ellis Island, et cetera, or you can have, an open welfare state and closed borders, but you really can't have both because your country will go bankrupt. So I think he's done some important things in changing the debate.
Okay. We got 2 more to get to, so I'll be a little quick, or try to be quick. I've never done that before. I'm going to give him a C-. And the only reason I'm going to give him a C- is because I'm going to agree with almost everything you said. But at the end of the day, I think I am probably a little less progressive than you when it comes to immigration. I do believe that this country was founded on immigration. It was built that way, and there are a lot of people who think that, because we got here first, we get to make the rules and say that we weren't here first. Every single person in this country right now, with the exception of those who are Native Americans, came here as immigrants. And thank God they didn't have that policy and some of the president's current policies in place back then, because wouldn't none of us be here. So I do believe that. That said, I do think we do have rules. And I think that the argument that we do need rules. And I think that the argument that trying to do a little bit more focus on merit-based is valuable. I don't think that some of the bans are valuable at all. I don't think that that some of the rhetoric that's come out of the White House that has led me to believe that he is just saying merit-based, but he's really just saying, I want people from Norway, is valuable at all. And I also have to say I'm incredibly disturbed by some of the rhetoric that the Attorney General had this week when he said, if you come over here with your kids, we're going to split your families up. It's not our fault that you came over here. I understand what he's trying to say if I'm just being a completely unbiased judge of law. I get that, but there is a degree of empathy that is necessary for every human being. We have to have some degree of empathy, and I think that I worry that that my grade next quarter is going to be lower than a C-.
All right, we got to move on.
We have to move on. We have to move on. So we'll let you go. We'll let you go last. We'll let you go last next time, so that you can rebut other people's stuff.
Let's go to economic policy.
Okay, economic policy.
Wow. I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay.
We saw that coming.
I think the tax plan has been spot on. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was exactly what we needed to jumpstart business development, jumpstart economic growth, and also what he's been doing on the deregulation side is exactly what we needed. So if you look economically at the recovery since the Great Depression, when we've had some troughs in the economy, we had the slowest one when the Democrats were controlling Congress and the executive. And a lot of that had to do with regulation. So I think, everything from net neutrality to banking regulation, community banking regulation, all sorts of things. It's been very positive for the economy. And I will note that my former employer, Moody's, just put out a report reaffirming the AAA rating with a stable rating, saying that the economic policy of this White House is, I don't want to.
Okay. Quickly moving on.
I'll tweet out the exact phrase from
please do that. We're going to quickly. I'm going to do a
great.
C. I'm going to do a C because I think that it's irresponsible for people to assume that the stock market is the equivalent of the economy doing well. Yes, the stock market has improved. I mean, it's doing gangbusters. Yes, the employment level has improved.
Who owns stocks, Clay?
I know. I want to get to that, and I'm going to let you get to it too, but I want to move it quickly. But but okay, I'm going to stop. We're going to save time and let you say exactly what I was about to
I
say.
will also go with a C. 80% of all stocks are owned by the top 10% of people. I'm tired of constantly seeing, we watch the news and the economy is reported on based on the stock market, which does not affect most people living in the United States.
But it makes people think it does, but it doesn't.
It makes people think it does, but it's not reflective of most people living, especially working class people, a lot of whom voted for Trump. So this idea that we're measuring the economy based on how well rich people are doing is ludicrous. And in this economy, rich people are doing extremely well because the tax plan that you cited and supported, most of that money, I bet over $80 billion, has been used to buy back stocks. It has not been used to
Give bonuses?
reinvest $2.5 billion.
Let's let Jason so that you don't have to lose it. Let's let Jason go next and wrap it up and say everything you want to say.
Plus.
There's his wrong.
So you guys are talking about the stock market. Let's talk about actual indicators of what the employment job and the job numbers and the economy is doing. So we have consumer confidence at a 17-year high. We have unemployment at a 17-year low. We have we have a surplus in tax collections, in federal tax collections in the last month of April. So we're doing great. We're doing excellent.
Collections.
There's
a difference between that and the deficit. But
we passed the biggest tax cut and reform bill in American history. We're starting to see that actually put money in the pockets of middle class Americans, working class Americans. So look, I think I read a stat that every single unemployed person in this country right now, there is a job opportunity for them today. That to me deserves an A++. This is a jobs president. He ran on the economy. I think that he's doing an excellent job.
I think it deserves a rebuttal too, but in fairness, I'm not going to do that right now. So we'll move on to foreign policy. I'm going to go first and be a complete wimp and give an incomplete. Because I would like to believe that the progress that has been made thus far in North Korea is going to continue to be progress, but I think that it is still too early to determine whether or not that's the case. If North Korea and the Korean Peninsula denuclearizes, then Democrats who don't give Donald Trump some credit for that are being political and irresponsible. But it's not going to be completely his credit, but he will have something to do with that having been done, and we cannot say he didn't. But I am not completely sure that I trust Kim Jong-un yet enough to say that any progress is going to be made. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not completely sure that I trust Donald Trump yet enough to believe that he's going to go in, make a promise, and then turn around, come home, and completely break it as he's done others. So I'm going to give him an incomplete because I want to give him a higher grade, but I don't think he's ready for it yet.
I appreciate you have an open mind. Kudos.
Oh, because that's the first time that's happened.
No, you often do.
This is why we like each other. I have a feeling she's going to give a similar thing, but let's move on.
Okay, all right. I'm going to give him an A+ because every single major decision, I was just like, yes, you go, boy. Like moving the Jerusalem embassy, finally. Congress said they had to do it. Bill Clinton said he was going to do it. Barack Obama said he was going to do it. George W. Bush said he was going to do it. Who actually did it? Donald J. Trump.
Okay.
And what has that
also,
accomplished?
the Iranian nuclear deal, he made the right call. Absolutely.
Just piss people off. Okay.
Okay.
We got to move it. You said you're A.
Yes.
Good Lord, help us. I'm gonna go ahead and let Alicé go.
You have the last word this time,
Yes.
right?
Yes, Alicé.
Agree with you entirely, 100%.
Can you rebut that for me, please?
Yeah.
While you got your turn.
Where Jerusalem is, but the North Korea thing for me is pretty historic, and I do have to. Again, it is incomplete. I think Donald Trump does deserve some of the credit. I also think South Korea's president has been stellar on this, and the North Korean leader as well. So even when we're talking about Nobel Peace Prizes, I believe if this does follow through, the two of them would be fair contenders. And Donald Trump, I honestly, I agree entirely with what you said. And Jerusalem is a mess. What he did in declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel is just going to exacerbate
Made
already.
Israel happy, but nobody else. Say
Exactly. Exacerbate tensions, and it's not leading to a two-state solution, which is where I think most of the world wants to go. Okay. So I'll hand it off to you, my friend.
I'm going with an A+.
I'm so
Look, I think that if President Trump does not slow down on foreign policy, there's going to be nothing to fix by Christmas.
I don't have any water left to spit out, but if I did.
Okay.
Look,
That's a good slogan.
With North Korea, it's been incredible to watch. Its leadership we have missed for so long, for decades, Republicans and Democrats, by the way. So it's an incredible use of power and strength. America's back. It feels like America's back in the world, on the world stage. And so it's peace through strength. And it's thinking differently, thinking uniquely, thinking just having a different approach. And look, we did elect I think, not an ideologue, but a pragmatist, a problem solver. And President Trump is a problem solver. He's not going to go to the left on an issue, to the right on an issue. He's going to look at the issue and try to come up with the best solution. And I think he's done an unbelievable job in North Korea. I think, look what he's done with ISIS. We've taken about 98% of their terrain since he took
Russia
office.
has.
We have,
But,
and we have a global sort of approach to it. And I think what we've done in just all around the world has been incredible. And I think that President Trump
you think
deserves
he's done a good job. Okay, we got that. And I loved this segment, and we've gone over so much that we're gonna have to say thank you very much to Jason and to Alicé. We're gonna come back and do this again because I like that.
Yes.
I like that. That was
Next
fun.
quarter.
We're gonna give it more. We're gonna give it a little more time next time so we can all really go for it. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Jason and Alicé. That was fun. We'll do it again.
Absolutely.
I do think that nuance is important. I didn't see much coming from you, but whatever.
Hey, no,
Here's the thing.
let's bring in a couple comments here first.
Do that.
I love this one from Ashanath.
That's not a comment, that's
how
related.
about Kanye and Clay duet?
Yeah, that ain't happening. I think the only people who we got who gave grades gave him Fs on everything, though. So Denise Koch is there a lower grade than F. Paulette Carletta, I'm giving him an F minus. Hyperbole maybe, but not that I completely disagree with some of it. I mean, I think nuance is important. Here's what I say: do you buy all of your clothes from the same designer and the same store?
No.
No. So you can't. I just find it hard to believe that anybody would agree with everything that anybody has done, much less this one president. And you do seem to agree with everything he does.
I gave him a B+ on immigration. That's not an A.
Yeah. Right. I wonder how our next guest would grade him on several things. We aren't going to talk about those issues, but we are going to talk about Donald Trump, the man, Donald Trump, the business leader. We're going to do it with Stephen Gilpin. He is a former Trump University professor. I think that's Ivy League, correct? Trump University professor, and he's the author of a new book called Trump U, the inside story of Trump University. Welcome, Stephen, so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So there's a lot of Trump expose books that are happening right now. Yes. Trump administration expose books, that type of thing. This one's very specific to a story that I think a lot of people have heard about but don't know too much about. You not only worked at Trump University, but you had a pretty important leadership role there. Tell us what people don't know about it.
Well, first off, a lot of people assume that this happened 10 years ago, and it really didn't. It just happened, and this case just settled on February 6th. The book came out February 20th. And then what people don't know is during the subpoena process, there was actually accredited people that actually worked there. I was one of them for many years.
What'd you teach?
I taught all aspects of real estate. Banking is my background in real estate, and real estate, actually education is still my background. I still do real estate education. I have a company called REO Tours. So we still teach real estate. Right now, we were teaching it for free every Thursday night for the masses because I'm honoring my commitment to help out these students still to this day. A lot of people don't understand, though, and one of the problems with it is what really happened. What was the inside of it? We were hushed. We couldn't talk about it for years. But now we can talk about it. And it was basically to clear my name and my involvement with it through the process. It was a bizarre ordeal from the whole subpoena process. We talk about Eric Schneiderman 36 times in the book. We talk about Michael Cohen. I even talk about Mueller and the investigation.
So there was a settlement, and
there was
$25 million to students. What exactly did they win? I mean, their complaint was that they had paid for something that was not actually helping them in any way. How do you quantify that? How do you say, yes, you paid for something and it is not valuable? Does a jury or a judge get to decide, yes, that was not valuable? I mean, what was the argument?
Basically, the complaint was, and the argument was, is that they were defrauded through their advertisements, and they actually frauded people out of their money. In most cases, that was the case. We look at that and we talk about that in our book and we write about it. And its example is high-pressured salespeople would actually upsell people into maxing out their credit cards. And these were sharks in the field.
So we just heard news about Schneiderman resigning in shame this week.
Yes.
What was your reaction to that in terms of his legacy? He's come under a lot of fire for his methods, his tactics.
Let's be very clear, though. He didn't resign in shame because of his work. or because of his
Right.
his work as the Attorney General. It was a personal issue. So I think that's important to clear up.
I quote in the book, he played rough with me. Right when I was during the subpoena process, I write in the book about how he played rough with me and manhandled, basically me, trying to get to me to the subpoena process. Yeah, he was very rough.
But his tactics what he was going after. Do you believe that the settlement was the correct thing to do? Do you think that these people had a case and that it was valuable? And
I think the people had a case. I think that they settled too much or too early. I think, and this is one of the things I was shocked about, they could have gotten more evidence for the case simply because we recorded every live event. And you would have, if you got those recordings actually would have brought in more money. They threw a lowball offer out there for $25 million. They should have never accepted it because it could have been up to $50 million.
So I think, and I hate that we don't have more time to talk about a lot of the things that are in here, but I found one of the more fascinating things, see if you disagree as usual, one of the more fascinating things in here was the fact that you did testify on behalf of Trump.
I did.
And you took the side of Trump University, and you say something to the effect, I'm going to mess it up, but that you were the loyal servant.
I was.
And that you did what the president wanted you to do, or at the time Mr. Trump wanted you to do, and yet you weren't repaid with loyalty as well. And I
Correct.
feel like you gave a warning to those folks who are playing the same role. Tell me about that and how that's, because I think that's pertinent to what's going on in the news today with Michael Cohen.
Absolutely, and I talk about it, and I was quoted about the Mueller investigation of it. And everybody, like Cohen is an example. I was loyal. I was extremely loyal to my job and my commitment, and also going during the testifying, casting my fate with Trump, and not with the Attorney General in New York and the other states that were actually suing. So one of the things is that you can be loyal all you want, but as soon as he has no use for you, he's going to toss you away, and all. And one of the things I was very upset about the whole process is that he lied. He clearly lied and said he didn't know who we were. And several times he was questioned. He said he didn't recall us at all. And then he had the nerve to go on CNN, basically, and news stations, and saying that I didn't know they weren't accredited. What?
Well, like I said, we got to go. I have so many things I want to ask you. Really quick, last two things. Quickly, advice for those folks who are being loyal today. And secondly, have you heard from the president or anyone about the book?
I have not heard from the president or Cohen or anybody or Schneiderman about the book yet. I'm waiting for that day actually to happen. It's probably going to be sooner than later as soon as we
get ready to be sued.
Oh yeah.
But advice for those folks, and then we got to go.
Advice for them? You can be loyal as you want. It's going to be the problem is you got to decide on your commitment. Because you're going to be out in the street anyway.
It's interesting that books like these will be part of the record and the history of America at one point. So thank you for sharing the story.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll let your work speak for itself. So
Stephen Gilpin,
we're going to disagree about a lot, but I appreciate you
That's
coming
okay.
on.
I disagree with her all the time. I'm glad you're here. Stephen Gilpin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
What do you disagree with, huh? I'm kidding. You don't have to do that. I mean, listen. We should do that again. But I think that listen. We can't just agree with the things that we like.
No, I agree.
And disagree with things
agree.
we don't
I
like.
think though what this whole investigation has shown is that justice. There's a reason that justice is blind on the statutes because justice is imperfect. And very often is very politicized.
And there's sometimes we win and there's sometimes we lose, but we can't always just be happy about the times we win and say it's wrong, the people were wrong, and justice wasn't carried through when we lose.
I agree. But I think that investigations are certainly politicized, and they have a lot of motives behind them sometimes too. But I want justice to happen. I just think we should have another segment about it.
Then let's do that. Let's do that. Let's bring out our next guest because Lord knows we need some motivational speaking right now. Rick, please help us out, Dr. Rick Rigsby. He's the motivational speaker and author of Afraid to Hope, Discovering the Courage to Dream Again. And Lord knows I need it. Lessons from a third grade dropout.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about thank you very much for being with us. Tell us about your book, who your third grade dropout is and what you learned.
I'm so honored to be with both of you. The wisest man I ever met in my life was my dad, a third grade dropout. He was wiser than any college professor, wiser than any titan of business, wiser than anybody I've ever met in the political realm. He taught me and my brother the basics. I have 4 degrees. My brother's a judge. We're not the smartest ones in our family. A third grade dropout dad. He would walk around the house saying, "Sons, listen, I'm not going to have a problem if you aim high and miss, but I'm going to have a real issue if you aim low and hit. He taught us basics, executing the basics. That's what gets you in the top on American Idol, right?
Well, not to the very top, but
you,
close.
But you
But he aimed high.
You aimed
He
high.
aimed very high.
And that's the key. I had a third grade dropout daddy who talked about common sense, which isn't so common anymore. We were taught you'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's never wrong to do the right thing. Always be kind. Make sure your servant's towel is bigger than your ego. It was said on one occasion that ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity.
Lord, say that again. Ego is the anesthesia
that deadens the pain of stupidity. And what my
interesting. I
what
like
my
that.
third grade dropout. That's right. And what my third grade dropout dad would say is, son, if it's all about you, you can't help Carrie. You can't help Clay. If it's all about you, you'll miss opportunities to give people hope, to love people, to encourage people. If it's all about you, you won't even pick up a paper towel on the floor in the bathroom so that you're making the bathroom better for the next person that's coming in.
Can we take you to the Bold office? Like, have you sit all day?
I'd love that.
Motivate all of us all day.
I mean, this thing about common sense being a factor, and it's a political show. We're not going to get into politics, but I do think that there is a divide between parts of the country where some people believe that book smarts and education are the only way to do things right, and then other places where people may not have gotten that type of education, but perhaps are wiser in some ways.
Absolutely.
How is that? How do we heal that sort of divide? How do we explain to people who are incredibly educated that there's a lot of wisdom in those who didn't go to college or high school maybe, and how do we explain to those folks who didn't go to college and high school that there are still things that can be learned from the other group?
Absolutely. Wisdom comes in all kinds of forms, shapes, sizes, and I really believe there are all different types of wisdom. What if I were to tell you that the two wisest people I ever met was obviously a third grade dropout dad and a dying wife? And it wasn't the fact that she was educated or not educated, but Trina's last words to me before she died: it doesn't matter to me any longer how long I live. What matters is how I live. Now, let me ask a very important question. Does that have anything to do with education? No. Does it have anything to do with politics? Absolutely not. Does it have anything to do with pontificating with an ecclesiastical excellence or the ability to successfully run a company? No. And so I think, to get right to your point, Clay, a divide will only disseminate when people begin to reason together, respect one another, and realize that everybody has dignity. All people have dignity. You know what? In this country, there's more than just an academic divide. There is a great divide on so many levels. And I remind myself every day that here's my mission. I don't live in the divided people of a country. I live in the United States of America, one nation under God. And if we can stop judging, we will grow the capacity to offer dignity and respect and common sense, and hopefully one day live in a country where there are no more divisions.
Doesn't that sound nice?
Dr. Rick for president.
Right. Let me ask you a question for Carrie.
Sure.
What does being bold mean to you?
Yeah.
What is bold?
Yeah, to me, bold means knowing what your purpose in life is and having the courage and the tenacity to see it through all the days of your life. Being bold to me means fulfilling your purpose with intensity, fulfilling your purpose every day, making sure that everything that you do with a tremendous impact.
Sure, but Rick, that sounds beautiful, but what about when horrible things are happening to you?
Well, that's
I mean, how do you get motivation when your wife died? How
Yeah.
did you get out of bed the next day?
Yeah,
How did you do that?
That's a great question, Carrie. As a matter of fact, my boldness was born out of rock bottom. Rock bottom is not necessarily a bad place on which to rebuild your life. I had to go through a lot of the things that people go through. I hope there are people listening now that are struggling. I hope that the people that are listening now, some of them are in a rut, because I have a word for you. Keep living. Put one foot in front of another. That doesn't seem like a big step. That is a huge step, and it will lead toward hope. You can't just hit rock bottom and the next day expect everything to be great. But this is what rock bottom does. does. It forces you to look at yourself and say, what can I do to improve? How can I grow? How can I reach up? How can I make excellence once again dominant and prominent in my life? Are there some things I need to change? I have to tell y'all something. We would hit rock bottom every day as a Division I football team. I was privileged to be the life skills coach at Texas A&M University. And so you'd lose a game. Let's say you lose a game to Notre Dame. You're flying home from South Bend. You only have a few hours to hang your head low. You got to figure out what to do. So the answer to your question is yes, while you're moping, while your pain is growing, while you're looking around talking about nobody knows the trouble I've seen, keep living. Take a step. Ask yourself, am I still breathing? If the answer is yes, do something that day. Here's a great way. Here's a great adaptive tool. Do something that day to help somebody else. Go buy some groceries, even though you're feeling horrible. Even though you're solo, you can play racquetball against the curb. Go buy some groceries. Take them to somebody, knock on the door, and leave before that person answers the door. I guarantee you, your heart will respond.
In New York, that might be considered stalking.
Yeah, right.
Well, you have to be careful.
We have to go again, unfortunately, because I just want to keep listening.
No, I know.
If people want to have you speak to their group, because we have people who have organizations.
Sure.
How do they get in touch with you?
RickRigsby.com.
Okay.
And my newest book is Afraid to Hope. I didn't want to live. I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to love. And I had to rediscover that hope was already inside of me. I just had to activate it.
We have people on here who are motivational speakers in the past, but this is the first one I'd want to go listen to for 35 minutes or an hour. So, I appreciate it.
Do you have a podcast?
Not yet.
Yeah,
we're working on it.
Bold's about to have one with you.
I would love that. It would be my honor. What a thrill to be with y'all.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Rick Rigsby.
Thank you.
He's got 2 books. You should get them both. Afraid to Hope, Discovering the Courage to Dream Again, and Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout. Dr. Rick Rigsby, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
You need to have him on Bold Life. You need to have him on Bold Rigsby. He needs to have his own thing. He needs to have his own,
everything. He's bold.
No, that was incredible.
No,
and I
he
think,
was. No, I feel.
We'll have information on how
Yes.
how you can reach out to him if you have a group that you want to have him speak.
We
for.
got a comment.
We can do that on
Melissa
Bold
Stewart
Global.
Melissa Stewart says she loves Dr. Rigsby.
I can understand why. I sat up straighter while I was here.
I'm just like,
Now, I'm very pumped about our next guest. You're going to have to stick with us later because we're going to go over 11 o'clock today. That's just how it's going to be because Amy Chua is with us. She sort of became somewhat well known as Tiger Mom several years ago, but she's written a book called Political Tribes, Group Instinct and the Fate of Nations, which is really a critical way of looking at how we have chosen to allow political parties to, I would argue, political parties to tell us how to think versus letting ourselves think and then join one. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm pumped about it. Carrie's pumped about this. I think that your book is spot on. And tell us, I think it's sort of common sense to a lot of people too, but you've been able to put it into words. Tell us why you wrote it and what you learned in the process.
Well, so part of the book is about foreign policy. And in a way, the book is about trying to explain the huge mess and confusion that's around us. So on the foreign policy front, we're the strongest country, the biggest military. Why are we still in Afghanistan? 17 years. ISIS, why is it here? We went into the war thinking we're going to do something, and now we have ISIS. Vietnam. So what I explain is that part of that is the role of tribalism, and that we are very idealistic in the United States. Even in our foreign policy, we think of democracy is going to solve everything. And then we go in and we don't realize that the Sunnis and the Shias and the Kurds, how do they relate? They have vendettas against each other. And then domestically, it's the same thing. Human beings, we're all incredibly tribal. Think about sports or teams that you love or family or church, things. And so it's not always bad. I love loyalty. But when tribalism takes over the political system, you can't get anything done. Basically, you're in these 2 teams, and you were trying to. I love the nuance. I actually think it's great that you guys do this, right? Because you're not even on the same team. But it's very rare. Where I teach at Yale, it's you can't even speak. You can't even say something just very normal, because it's coded. If you question even what TV show If you say you watch this show, oh my God, you're branded.
Right.
You are this, or even what song you like, right?
Why do you think we've done that? Because have we always done that as a society?
Of course, to a certain extent, but it is actually different right now. And I try to explain part of it is demographic. This massive immigration change that we have seen, we're struggling. It's like it's almost like two Americas, right? These two competing
and that's
visions.
exactly what William Galston with Brookings said. So he recently wrote a column saying that the Republican Party, demographically, the voter base of the Republican Party looks like how America looked 20 years ago. And the base of the Democratic Party looks how America will look in 20 years. So neither party is actually what America looks like
Completely
today.
agree. And yes, and the problem is that when you go out and talk to normal Americans, actually a lot of people are in the middle. Like even just 10 years ago, Democrats and Republicans overlapped a lot more on immigration. It's like, let's talk about it.
But
We're
don't
worried.
you think we still do? But then, I used to say when I ran for Congress, I said, 80% of the country is within 10 yards of the 50-yard line, but the noise that we hear, the stuff we see on TV, on the radio, on social media, tends to be in the end zones.
But actually now some polls about immigration show that even if you look at Democrats and Republicans now, their views are much more polarized and extreme compared to even just 7 years ago.
Do you think it's because we believe that, or do you think it's because we've decided we need to pick a team and we need to stick with that?
I think it's the latter. I don't think people, and first of all, I think part of the problem is we can't even have a conversation, right? So with immigration, if somebody just says, I'm worried about the numbers or just something incredible, I'm anxious, instantly racist, xenophobe, Islamophobe. And as soon as you do that to people that are expressing, so what I like to say is, let's take China. Imagine if you took the Chinese people discovered that in 20 years their country would be majority white or no longer Chinese. You know what they would feel? Or Ghana. It's not going to be. They would feel anxious. And it doesn't mean that they're racist or xenophobe. They're just anxious about their country changing. Change is scary. So we should acknowledge that's a human nature reaction, and we should talk about it. What are the rules going to be? And we're going to fight, right? We're all going to disagree. But the problem, to answer your question, is we're not even talking. We're talking to ourselves.
And that's why I really loved the Kanye tweet, because I wrote a piece about identity politics for CNN last week, and I called out, I see identity politics happening on both the left and the right. I think absolutely the right has tapped into the anxiety that the traditional 20 years ago America looked like. But the reason I wrote the piece was because Nancy Pelosi made a comment about white men and how she was sick of seeing 5 white men at the table. And so I'm just like, okay, is that your tactic, that you're going to continue this sort of identity politics? And so I'd like to see, the point of your book is to say, look, it's okay to be proud about your identity, but the super identity of Americans should supersede the pride. And your previous book I found was really interesting as being raised Mormon, because you look at Mormons, Jews, and Asian Americans in this country.
Which is so taboo even to talk about that. Yeah.
Right. No, which I love. I love that you're a bold woman. But I think that's the central thesis, that you're saying it's okay to embrace your identity and your tribe, if you will, but the bigger tribe that we're losing sight of is the American tribe.
But I completely get it. And why should that be a left or right thing? We're at this point to say that America, of course we made lots of mistakes. Of course we don't want to whitewash our history, but it's a special country, right? Built on special values. And that's become like a right-wing thing to say.
And
it's crazy.
I think Carrie and I agree a lot of times on the fact that identity politics has gone too far. But are there not some times when it's okay? I would argue that seeing 5 white men at the table is a reasonable thing to be bothered by. I think that the table should look like the country. It shouldn't look like the country 50 years ago or the country 50 years from now. It should look like the country now. Are there times when it's okay?
Yes, but I think in a way, my question is, how do we make progress?
Yeah.
If you tell somebody in, I don't know, Ohio, you're a racist.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so do you think that person is then going to say, oh my God, you're right. I'm going to go and vote for the other team? No, that will drive people harder into underground. They will take more extreme views. And I think the views underground are where there is more extremism.
But listen, amen 100 times, because I've said many, many times, a friend of mine, I've got a lot of Republican female friends. Another friend of mine, and we talk about this all the time, that you can't call someone racist and then expect them to all of a sudden agree with you. And this particular friend did not vote for Donald Trump. She's conservative. She did not vote for Donald Trump, but she herself has said, listen, I keep getting hit so hard for being a conservative, even though I didn't vote for him. I'd vote for him next time. And I say, you know what? You're going to
Was that for me? That's exactly how I feel.
Well, no, you feel differently because you think
I
he's
didn't
wonderful.
vote for him either.
But you think he's
I'll
wonderful.
vote for him. I will because.
But I think when you back somebody in a corner, they swing. Like that's the only thing you can do. And I've said many times, my family all voted for Donald Trump, and I have found that it's easier and smarter to not say anything because I'll let them kind of walk themselves out of the corner a little bit. As soon as I say, well, what about this? They run right back. You make people, if you make it a binary choice, if you make it, you're not with us, you're against us, then people are going to have to choose a side,
and
right?
that goes back to your thing about the why. It's how do you phrase something, right? I mean, yes, maybe that's a huge problem, right? How do we make progress? And this goes back to the tribalism. I think we're at a place where we're getting nothing done on these incredibly important issues. You could even see it. Everyone's completely predictable. A news item will come up, and you know exactly what everybody's going to say, And so immigration, we need to fix it.
I love being surprised.
Yeah.
And I've said this. I don't trust anyone who I agree with all the time. And I don't trust anyone who I disagree with. I don't trust anyone who I disagree with all the time. And we fight about that always, I just don't like it when I go this way sometimes and this way the other times. And anybody who agree with all the time is probably lying to you some of the time. So
I try to
do you agree with yourself?
Not always. Not always. I sat here today trying to grade something. I was like, I think about it, and I think we've stopped thinking as a people. We've decided to just say what's right. I mean, I don't want to get too far into it. We're already over, but I love this topic.
Americans are supposed to be individualists.
Yeah, right.
We're supposed to be independent-minded and free-thinking. That's what our identity
we
is supposed to be.
We think we are, don't we? Well, I mean, how many people say, when I was running for Congress,
I agree with you.
So many people said, I don't like any party. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. But they voted straight party. They registered independent and voted straight party one way or the other.
Yeah, and
We want to believe we're independent,
to
but we're not.
I think it's a wonderful book.
I think
Very
it's the most.
excited
I
that
think
you
it's
wrote it.
honestly one of
Yes.
the most important political books that's been written in years.
Well-
And if you haven't read it and you haven't found it, please do, because I swear by that, and I've never said that in this room ever before. I do think it's one of the most important political
Thank you so much.
books, and I wish we could figure out a way to break it. And I hope that we can read it and figure out how you can be a part of helping to break this horrible tribalist society we have. Amy
you so
Chuith,
much.
thank you so much for being
Such
with
a
us.
pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Wow.
having her on.
Of course.
I'm thrilled.
We've been trying for a while.
I know. Well, thank
She's
you.
in demand.
Yeah, as she
we're,
should be.
We're lucky.
Seriously, I'm not joking around. Find it and read it. And thank you for joining us and staying with us a little bit longer. I think it was important to stick around a little longer today.
Absolutely. Well, and make sure you come back at 12 o'clock Eastern for Bold Life.
We
There's a
stick around
great-
long enough, we'll still be here.
Yeah. And make sure you share the episode with your friends. Keep the conversation going. We want this.
Who's hosting Bold Life today?
So Bold Life, well, as far as we have, Kirsten had left, and so we are trying out a few different people, and one of our favorites is going to be here, and you'll see, Miss Diana.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go.
But we've also got ESPN host Chris McKendry going to be with us, and it'll be
Stick around. Make
Yes.
sure you find out. And then we'll be back on Tuesday with Bold Business at 9 a.m. And then we'll be back here next week. We're actually going to be back 2 weeks in a row.
Yes.
Who knew? 2 weeks in a
Great.
row. We'll be back here next Friday at 10. See you then. Thanks, guys.